In this tutorial, I'm going to show you a little bit about the Clone Stamp tool. Clone Stamp tool, a photo editing feature here in your toolbox, and it looks like a little old-fashioned kind of rubber stamp. Allows us to take pixels from one area of an image and basically duplicate them in another area of the image. So what do we mean by pixels? So let's see if we can zoom in here really close enough for you guys. And you see these squares here? My image that you see on the screen is compiled of all these squares. One square is referred to as a pixel. So all those pixels put together are what we see in our image. And when we're using the Clone Stamp tool, again, what I'm doing is I'm selecting pixels from one area and I'm copying them over to another area. So what they usually refer to that is clone material. Sometimes I've seen it referred to as clone samples. I've even seen it referred to as pixel sampling. But regardless, it's like if I want this cloud over from here over to here, I can literally, without copying and pasting, I can just copy just the pixels in those areas and brush them over to here. Kind of show you what we're talking about. We see this nice, pretty blue sky, but if I turn off this layer, that's what the original image was. I cloned out all the balloons. I also used the curves to take out some of that magenta that you see in the sky, because this was a web image. So how does it work? Well, let's go ahead. Best practices. I'm going to duplicate my background. So I always got a copy in case I mess up. And we're going to take out this balloon right here. So the Clone Stamp tool works just like other brushes. I can set it to soft or hard. I can change its mode if I want, its flow if I want, all that kind of good stuff, its size. Set it to a nice bigger size so I can clone this out. In this particular image, it's really kind of easy because the background is very, very neutral. So, you know, it's going to be really easy to clone him out because, you know, there's, you know, just a lot of blue sky around and stuff like that. Very kind of open image. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down my Option key, and if you got a Windows keyboard, it's your Alt key. But you're going to hold down your Option key and see how my brush changes. When it changes to that, what it's telling me is that that's the area that I want to take pixels from. And so I'm going to pull from around this area so it looks like a nice, smooth, seamless blend. And what I do is I hold down my Option key and I click my mouse, and you're not going to see anything, but I've just picked samples from that area. And so then, once I've had the samples selected, you start brushing it in. Now, you can see how it's kind of obvious that that's where I covered it up at, and I did that on purpose so that you guys could see that, is that this is not really the effect that you want when you're painting in cloning or anything like that, is that you don't want it to look quite so obvious that you cloned it out, because then it just looks like this kind of awkward spot. So it's a more of a painstaking sort of process. And what we mean by painstaking is it takes a little work if you want it to look right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sample closer to the balloon and then just paint a little. And I'm going to set my brush smaller. And see how it's looking less like a spot now, and it's looking more like I'm blending it in. So we'll take a little bit more from that area, paint in. And one of the things that you got to be careful of, I'll show you that real quick too, is if you sample too closely and you start trying to paint in, it's going to start painting in. See how it's starting to paint in the balloon? It's because I'm crossing over into pixels. And so the brush, let's Command Z that out. So when I select from a sample and I start painting, see that cross that shows up? That's where it's actually pulling samples from, clone material from. So if that cross goes over into your image, for example, like we were just showing you, then it's going to pick up wherever it crosses into. And so now, when I'm cloning this out, it just is going to look a little smoother and not much like a spot. And that's kind of what you want to do when you're cloning things out. And we use this trick sometimes in graphic design with compositing things, taking out blemishes, like scratches and or reflections and things like that. With digital photography, we use it an awful lot, sometimes to clean up portraits, wrinkles, smooth things out. We use a healing brush for that more than the clone tool, but you know, sometimes the clone tool comes in handy as well. But this is the clone tool and the basics of it in Adobe Photoshop.